Okay, let's turn our attention to contexting now and looking at the framework of high context and low context. I'm going to start with a passage in Genesis. Sarah lived to be 127 years old. She died at Kiriath Arba, that is Hebron, in the land of Canaan. And Abraham went to mourn for Sarah and to weep over her. Then Abraham rose from beside his dead wife and spoke to the Hittites. He said, I'm an alien and a stranger among you. Sell me some property for a burial site here so I can bury my dead. The Hittites replied to Abraham, Sir, listen to us. You are a mighty prince among us. Bury your dead in the choicest of our tombs. None of us will refuse you his tomb for burying your dead. So the basic story, of course, is Sarah dies and Abraham needs to bury her, but he's in Canaan, which is not his ancestral land, so he doesn't have any really claim to a burial site for her. So he talks to the Hittites, and he asks them, they're gathered at the gate of the city, which is common, and when you say city, think more of village, and the reality is a lot of times village life can be quite slow. Something new happens, it gets the attention of people pretty quickly. Not too long ago, my father and mother were visiting us, and his car was parked on the street in front of our house, and a drunk driver came along and smashed into the car and totaled it. Nobody was in our car. The drunk driver was okay, but the reality was, the next thing I knew, all of our neighbors were out on the street helping direct traffic before the police arrived there and everything else. Everyone was gathering around because of the accident. It was loud enough that everybody heard it inside their houses. And they gathered around to help, but they gathered around because they were curious. They wanted to see what happened, and they were just interested. Think of that parallel type of situation here, but in village life, things are a lot slower than they are in suburban Chicago area. So he asked them, he wants to bury his dead, and what do the people say? The Hittites say, bury your dead. Of course you can bury Sarah, but indirectly what they're saying is we're open to negotiation. Okay, so we turn to the rest of the passage. Then Abraham rose and bowed down before the people of the land, the Hittites. He said to them, if you're willing to let me bury my dead, then listen to me and intercede with Ephron, son of Zohar, on my behalf. So he will sell me the cave of Machpelah, which belongs to him and is at the end of his field. Ask him to sell it to me for the full price as a burial site among you. Ephron the Hittite was sitting among the people, and he replied to Abraham in the hearing of the Hittites who had come to the gate of the city. No, my lord, he said, listen to me. I give you the field. I give you the cave that is in it. I give it to you in the presence of my people. Bury your dead. And as an American, I say, praise God. I don't even have to pay for the site. He's just giving it to me. Because that's what I think is actually happening. And yet, that's not what's really happening. So if I said to all of you right now, and for those of you who are watching this on video, there's a student in class whose name is Calvin, just so you have this as a context. So if I said to you, look, I really need an HP computer, and I want to buy a used one. If someone in class, if you guys would intercede with Calvin on my behalf so that I could buy his computer, that would be wonderfully exciting. And so what Calvin would say, he would say, well, no, I'm Dr. Moreau, I'm going to give you the computer. I give it to you. Just take it from me right now. Did I know Calvin was already here in the classroom? Of course I did. But what I'm doing is I'm giving Calvin an indirect way to either answer or not answer. If he chooses to not answer, that means he's not open to negotiation. If he answers, it means he's open to negotiation and he's willing to sell me his computer. But he doesn't say sell, because Middle East generosity, at least at first blush, requires, no, you don't sell something to somebody, you give it to them. But the reality is he's not literally offering to give it to me. The way he would refuse my request now is just by being quiet. The way he responds positively to my request is saying, oh, it's yours. Just take it. So you'll notice we go on here. Abraham bowed down before the people of the land and said to Ephron in their hearing, listen to me, Calvin, if you will, I'm going to pay the full price for your computer. I'm contexting this a little bit for you and being free with the text right now. Accept it for me so I can bury my dead in your computer. No, so I can put my files on your computer. Ephron answered Abraham, listen to me, my lord. The land is worth 400 shekels of silver. What's that between me and you? Bury your dead. I like the way it's written here. Abraham agreed to Ephron's terms. So you see clearly as this passage is being written, the author is realizing this is a contract that's taking place right now. And weighed out for him the price he had named in the hearing of the Hittites. You don't need a written contract if you make the contract in public. They are your witnesses for the contract. Bury your dead. He agreed to his terms, and he named in the hearing of the Hittites 400 shekels of silver according to the weight current among the merchants. So Ephron's field in Machpelah near Mamre, both the field and the cave in it, and all the trees within the borders of the field, here's the deeding taking place right now, was deeded to Abraham as his property in the presence of all the Hittites who had come to the gate of the city. Oh, I'll sell you the computer. Look, it's worth $150. But what's that between you and me? Just take it. And again, I as an American would say, you are unbelievably generous. Thank you. Praise God for that gift. Now, it's interesting to say what happens if Abraham hadn't understood that and he thought it actually was a gift. Well, you'd lose a lot of face if now you said, no, wait a second, you need to buy it, but I'm losing face in front of everybody by not knowing the rules of the social game. And therefore, nobody would trust me from there on in. I would not be a good neighbor. You would lose face. Probably our families would become enemies. Not just you and me, but all who follow us for generations to come. Because I took the land from you. And literally, this would be seen as a type of theft. But you can see how the reality is when you're in negotiating settings, understanding the language people are using is very important. And high context and low context is the more technical way to talk about that. We can talk about direct and indirect language as well, too. Okay, Luke 15 in the New Testament. Now the tax collectors and sinners were all gathered around here Jesus, but the Pharisees and the teachers of the law muttered, "This man welcomes sinners and eats with them." So what does Jesus do? He tells them three stories. The story of the lost sheep, the story of the lost coin, and the story of the lost son. You know what the problem is? We've mislabeled the stories. Because they're not about the lost sheep or the lost coin and the lost son. They're about the rejoicing in heaven that takes place when the lost are found. And the first 2 points are very clear. I tell you, Jesus says, angels in heaven rejoice when one person is found. Just as the shepherd rejoiced, just as the woman rejoiced. They're kind of normal stories, but they end in an abnormal way. What shepherd is going to go tell his other shepherd friends, oh, I lost a sheep, and now I found it? What woman is going to go probably spend the coin that fell out of her hair, where her coins were woven into her hair? That's her dowry, that's her inheritance, and she's going to drop the coin and then go celebrate with everybody about it. No, they're not going to do that. So they start with a normal element of life, and they end up somewhat audaciously. Then the third story, the story that we call the lost son, starts audaciously. The son goes and tells his dad, die. Or if not, just give me the inheritance. And you know how the insult is in this day and age to say, I want my inheritance now. I wish you were dead, in effect. And then he goes and squanders it all. So this one is audacious from the beginning. That the father gives into this is something that a self-respecting adult in many cultures of the world would never give into this, because he and his entire clan then would lose reputation among the community. So he gives into this, but the point of the story is what? The muttering of the Pharisees and the scribes against Jesus eating with sinners. That's where the stories are going. So the stories are going first to a lost sheep. Look what happens when the sheep are found. The sheep is found. A lost coin. Look what happens when the coin is found. Now a lost son. The son is found by the father and he rejoices. But what's the rest of the story? It's the older brother. And clearly in this story, the Pharisees are the older brother. And he mutters against the younger brother's salvation, just as the Pharisees are muttering against the tax collectors and the sinners and against Jesus eating with them. In this case, it's not as much high context, but it's a reminder that if you don't look at the context of the parables, you forget why they're there. So I would rename the parables the rejoicing over a lost sheep that was found, rejoicing over a lost coin that was found, rejoicing over a lost son that was found, and then the main point is Pharisees, the story leads off with us not knowing the conclusion. How do the Pharisees react to it? And it's an open invitation in a high context way. Instead of Jesus in this point in time directly saying, Pharisees, you losers, look who's listening to me. These are people that are lost. Shouldn't you care about them? He doesn't do it directly. He does it indirectly. The point is, are they going to catch it or not?